Oops, forgot your ticket. Go home, maybe next trip. Sarah's voice was sweet as sugar, but her eyes held the satisfaction of a cat who'd just cornered a mouse. Standing there at JFK Airport, surrounded by families heading off to their dream vacations, I felt the blood drain from my face as the reality hit me. $33,000. That's what I'd paid for this family trip to Paris, and they'd planned to ditch me all along. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. My name is Linda Walker, and at 68, I thought I'd seen every kind of betrayal family could dish out. I was wrong. 2 months ago, when my son Michael suggested a family vacation to celebrate the holidays, I'd been over the moon. Mom, wouldn't it be amazing if we all went to Paris together? The kids would love it, and Sarah's always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. The way he said it, so casual, so loving. I never questioned who would pay. I just opened my checkbook like I always did. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, had volunteered to handle all the bookings. Leave everything to me, Linda. I have experience with international travel. She'd smiled, that perfect smile of hers, the one that had fooled me for 16 years of marriage to my son. I'd handed over my credit card information without a second thought. Hotels, tours, flights for 5 people, everything first class because we want this to be special. Standing at the departure gate, watching my son avoid eye contact while Sarah explained how there'd been a mix-up with my reservation, I realized the truth. The reservation hadn't been mixed up. It had never existed. They'd taken my money, planned their dream vacation, and never intended for me to be part of it. My grandson Jake, 14 years old, looked mortified. My granddaughter Emma, 16, was staring at her phone, pretending this wasn't happening. There must be some mistake, I said, though deep down I knew there wasn't. Sarah shrugged, her designer carry-on slung over her shoulder. These things happen with international flights. You understand, right? We can't miss our connection. That's when I understood exactly what kind of game they'd been playing, and decided it was time to change the rules. 3 months earlier, I'd been sitting in my garden in Westchester, enjoying my morning coffee when Michael called. Mom, I have an idea that might sound crazy, but hear me out. He'd always been a charmer, my Michael. Even as a little boy, he could talk his way into extra cookies or a later bedtime. At 42, that charm had evolved into something more calculated, though I'd been too much of a loving mother to see it clearly. Sarah and I were talking, and we realized the kids are getting older. Emma's going to college in 2 years. Jake's growing up so fast. We want to create some family memories before they're too busy with their own lives. His voice had that wistful quality that always made me want to fix whatever was wrong. What would you think about all of us taking a trip together? Somewhere really special? I'd set down my coffee cup, already feeling the familiar warmth that came whenever my family included me in their plans. After Robert died 5 years ago, those invitations had become precious. What did you have in mind? Paris, he'd said, and I could hear the excitement in his voice. Christmas in Paris, can you imagine? We could see the Champs-Élysées all lit up, visit the Louvre, eat croissants for breakfast every day. Sarah found this amazing hotel near the Arc de Triomphe. The way he painted the picture, I could see all of us strolling along the Seine, laughing over dinner at a sidewalk cafe, watching Emma and Jake discover a new culture. It sounded perfect. Too perfect, my practical side whispered, but I shushed that voice. This was my family wanting to spend time with me. It sounds wonderful, sweetheart. When were you thinking? December 15th through the 23rd. I know it's expensive, especially for 5 people, but we've been saving up. That should have been my first clue. Michael worked in insurance sales, decent money, but nothing spectacular. Sarah had a part-time job at a boutique. The kind of Paris vacation he was describing would cost more than they made in several months. But when someone you love presents you with a dream, you don't analyze the budget. You just say yes and figure out how to make it happen. How much are we talking about? Around $30,000 for everything. Hotels, flights, tours, nice restaurants. I know it's a lot, but think about the memories we'd create. His voice took on that persuasive tone I recognized from his sales work. The kids would remember this trip for the rest of their lives. I didn't hesitate. Consider it my early Christmas gift to the family. That afternoon, I'd called Sarah to discuss the details. She'd been bubbling with enthusiasm, already having researched restaurants and museums. Oh, Linda, this is going to be incredible. I'll handle all the bookings since I'm better with computers, and we can coordinate everything perfectly. Looking back now, standing in that airport watching my family prepare to board without me, I wondered how I'd missed the calculation behind her eagerness. The first red flag should have been the secrecy. In the weeks following our initial conversation, whenever I tried to discuss the trip details, Sarah would deflect. "Don't worry about it, Linda. I have everything under control." When I offered to help with research or asked to see the hotel information, she'd smile and change the subject. "You just focus on packing and getting excited. This is supposed to be a surprise vacation for you too." At 68, I wasn't naive. I'd raised 4 children, survived 35 years of marriage, and buried my husband. I knew when something didn't feel right, but I also knew what it felt like to be excluded from family plans. And I desperately wanted to believe my son and daughter-in-law genuinely wanted me there. The second red flag came 2 weeks before departure. Sarah had called to ask about my passport, just making sure it's current for international travel. When I told her it was, she'd paused. "Could you send me a photo of it? For the airline reservations." I'd taken a picture and texted it immediately, proud of my technological competence with my smartphone. 3 days later, she'd called again. "Linda, there's been a slight change. The hotel we originally booked was overbooked, so I had to switch us to a different one. Still beautiful, still in a great location, just a different confirmation number." She'd rattled off some numbers that I'd dutifully written down, though something in her tone felt rehearsed. The third red flag was the biggest one, and I almost missed it entirely. Last Thursday, exactly 1 week before our departure, I'd driven to the mall to pick up some last-minute items for the trip. Coming out of Macy's, I'd spotted Sarah across the food court, deep in conversation with her sister Rebecca. Nothing unusual about that, except for what I'd overheard as I approached their table. "I still can't believe you're actually going through with this," Rebecca was saying. "It's cruel, even for you." Sarah had laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "She'll get over it. Besides, someone needs to teach her that money doesn't buy you a place where you're not wanted." I'd frozen behind a pillar, shopping bags heavy in my hands as the words sank in. Rebecca had shaken her head. "But $30,000, Sarah. That's a lot of money to take from someone. Think of it as a lesson in boundaries," Sarah had replied. "She'll finally understand that throwing money at every situation doesn't make her indispensable." I'd backed away slowly, my heart pounding, and spent the rest of the week trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood. They couldn't be planning what it sounded like they were planning. Not my own family. But standing at that airport gate, watching Sarah's smug expression as she delivered her perfectly rehearsed lines about the forgotten ticket, I knew I'd heard exactly what I thought I'd heard. The old Linda would have burst into tears, begged them to find a solution, maybe even offered to pay for another ticket on the spot. But something had shifted during that week of knowing the truth. The woman standing in JFK Airport wasn't the same pushover who'd been writing checks for family emergencies for the past 5 years. "You know what, Sarah?" I said, keeping my voice calm and pleasant. "These things do happen." I turned to Michael, who was studying his boarding pass with suspicious intensity. "Have a wonderful time in Paris, sweetheart. I hope it's everything you dreamed it would be." The taxi ride back to Westchester gave me exactly 47 minutes to plan my response. Not my reaction, my response. There's a difference between the two that most people my age have learned the hard way. A reaction is emotional, impulsive, something you regret later. A response is calculated, purposeful, and infinitely more satisfying. By the time we pulled into my driveway, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Inside my house, I made myself a cup of tea and sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop. If Sarah thought she was tech-savvy enough to outmaneuver a woman who'd been managing household finances since before she was born, she was about to learn otherwise. My late husband, Robert, had been an accountant, and 40 years of marriage had taught me the importance of keeping meticulous records. I opened my email and located every confirmation number, every booking reference, every receipt that Sarah had sent me over the past 3 months. Hotel reservations, flight confirmations, tour bookings, restaurant reservations, even tickets to a show at the Moulin Rouge. Everything booked in my name. Everything paid for with my credit card. Everything completely within my legal right to modify or cancel. The hotel reservation was first. The Hotel Plaza Athénée, 5 nights, 2 adjoining suites, $3,800 total. I called their reservation line, and after being transferred twice, reached a delightfully helpful woman named Marie. "Madame Walker, of course I can help you with your reservation. You wish to modify your booking?" Her English was accented but clear. "Actually, I need to cancel completely. There's been a family emergency." I kept my voice steady, professional. "I understand there may be cancellation fees. Let me check your booking." "Ah, I see you purchased our flexible rate. No cancellation fee if cancelled before 24 hours of check-in. Since your reservation begins tomorrow, you are well within the window. Shall I process this cancellation?" "Yes, please." "Très bien. Your cancellation is confirmed, and the full amount will be credited to your card within 3 to 5 business days. I hope your family emergency resolves well." If only she knew how well it was about to be resolved. Next were the flights. This took longer, involving multiple transfers and a 40-minute hold, but eventually I reached someone who could help. Business class tickets to Paris, Charles de Gaulle, $3,900 each for 5 passengers. Unlike the hotel, these had a cancellation fee, but even after penalties, I'd get back roughly $14,000. The tour bookings were easier. Private guide for the Louvre, Seine River cruise, day trip to Versailles, wine tasting in Burgundy. Easy. One by one, I canceled them all. Each confirmation email that arrived in my inbox felt like a small victory. The hardest call was to the restaurant where Michael had specifically wanted to eat Christmas dinner, Le Grand Vefour, where he'd planned to propose a toast to family traditions. The maitre d' was understanding when I explained there'd been a change in plans. By 7 o'clock that evening, I'd canceled everything. Every reservation, every booking, every carefully planned detail of their dream vacation. My credit card company confirmed that refunds were already being processed. Now came the best part. I opened a new document on my laptop and began typing. "Dear Michael and Sarah, I hope your flight to Paris was comfortable. By now, you've probably arrived at the Hotel Plaza Athénée, only to discover that your reservation has been cancelled." I paused in my typing, imagining their faces when they realized what had happened. Then I continued, "Since you clearly didn't want me on this family vacation, I assumed you also didn't want my money funding it. I've taken the liberty of canceling all the reservations I paid for. Hotels, flights home, tours, restaurant reservations, even your tickets to the Moulin Rouge. Consider it a lesson in consequences. You see, when you take $33,000 from someone while planning to humiliate them, you should probably make sure they can't undo your plans with a few phone calls. I may be 68, but I'm not the foolish old woman you clearly think I am. The hotel has confirmed your checkout for this morning. Your return flights have been canceled, though you're welcome to purchase new ones at current rates. I checked, and last-minute flights home during peak holiday season run about $4,000 each. I hope you brought extra credit cards. Don't bother calling me begging for help. My phone will be turned off for the next week while I enjoy a lovely staycation in the comfort of my own home, spending the refunded money on myself for once. Perhaps next time you'll think twice before treating family like an ATM with feelings. Merry Christmas from snowy New York, Mom P.S. I've tucked this note into Sarah's makeup bag. By the time you find it, you'll have already discovered that your dream vacation has become a very expensive nightmare. I printed the note on my good stationery, folded it carefully, and smiled. Earlier that afternoon, while they were going through security, I'd slipped back to their departure gate and found Sarah's carry-on where she'd left it under Michael's chair. It had taken exactly 30 seconds to unzip her makeup bag and tuck the note inside. The beauty of my plan wasn't just the cancellations. It was the timing. They'd discover the hotel problem first, probably attributing it to some computer error. They'd waste hours at the front desk, making phone calls, trying to sort out what they'd assume was a mistake. Only when Sarah opened her makeup bag later that evening would they understand this wasn't an accident. I poured myself a glass of wine and called my best friend Beth. We'd known each other since our children were in elementary school together, and she was the only person who'd seen through Sarah's sweet act from the beginning. "Linda, how was your flight? Are you calling from Paris?" "I'm calling from my kitchen in Westchester," I said, unable to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. "What happened? Don't tell me they canceled the trip." "Oh, the trip wasn't canceled. I just wasn't invited to participate in it. Apparently, being the financier didn't guarantee me a seat on the plane." The silence on Beth's end lasted exactly 3 seconds before she exploded. They did not leave you at the airport. Please tell me you're joking. They left me at the airport. But don't worry, I made sure their vacation will be memorable for all the wrong reasons. I told her everything. The overheard conversation, the airport humiliation, and my afternoon of systematic reservation cancellations. By the time I finished, Beth was laughing so hard she was crying. Linda Walker, you magnificent woman. I've been waiting 16 years for you to stand up to that manipulative little witch. I should have done it sooner. The important thing is you did it now. How do you feel? I considered the question seriously. How did I feel? Free, I said finally. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The first text arrived at 2:47 a.m. my time, which meant it was 8:47 a.m. in Paris. I knew this because I'd been lying awake, unable to sleep despite my earlier exhaustion, checking my phone every few minutes. When it finally buzzed, I felt a jolt of satisfaction that was better than caffeine. Mom called me immediately. There's been some kind of mistake with the hotel. Michael's message was followed 30 seconds later by another one. They're saying our reservation was canceled. We're standing in the lobby with our luggage and 2 crying kids. I turned my phone face down and went back to sleep. The next barrage came 2 hours later. 7 messages in rapid succession, each one more frantic than the last. The hotel manager won't help us. We can't find another room anywhere. Do you know what happened with the booking? This isn't funny anymore. The kids are exhausted and scared. Please just call me back. I made myself breakfast instead. Pancakes from scratch, the way Robert used to like them. Extra butter, real maple syrup, fresh strawberries. I ate slowly, savoring each bite while my phone continued to buzz against the kitchen counter. Around noon, Sarah's number appeared on my screen. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message on speaker. Linda! Her voice was tight with controlled fury. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but this needs to stop right now. We're in a foreign country with 2 children, and we need somewhere to stay. Whatever problem you have with us can be discussed when we get home, but right now, we need you to fix this. The entitlement in her voice was breathtaking. Even now, even after being caught in their scheme, she still expected me to solve their problems. The next voicemail came from Emma, my 16-year-old granddaughter. Her voice was shaky, younger than her years. Grandma, I don't understand what's happening. Dad won't tell us anything, and Mom's been crying. We're sitting in some cafe and everyone looks scared. Could you please call us back? I miss you. That one almost broke my resolve. Almost. But I reminded myself that Emma's parents had put her in this situation, not me. They'd chosen to use my money for a vacation they never intended me to enjoy, and now they were experiencing the consequences of that choice. By evening, the messages had become desperate. Michael's voice cracked as he explained they'd found a small hotel in a questionable neighborhood for 3 times the normal rate. Mom, please, I know you're angry, but the kids don't deserve this. We're scared, we're running out of money, and we don't know what to do. I turned my phone off and spent the evening wrapping Christmas presents for my neighbor's children. Real presents, bought with care and thought, not money thrown at a problem to make it disappear. The next morning I turned my phone back on to find 43 missed calls and 17 voicemails. The progression told a story. Confusion, then panic, then fury, then desperate pleading. The final message was from Sarah, and her voice was pure venom. You vindictive old bitch, I hope you're happy. We're stuck in Paris with no money and no way home, and it's all because you couldn't handle being left out of one little trip. This is exactly why nobody wants you around. You're toxic, selfish, and pathetic. Don't expect to see your grandchildren again when we get back. I deleted the message and made myself another cup of coffee. Sarah had just revealed her true self completely, and I'd captured it all on voicemail. Sometimes the best response is giving people enough rope to hang themselves. But her threat about the grandchildren had hit its mark. That evening, as I sat in my living room watching the snow fall outside, I wondered if my moment of satisfaction had cost me the relationship with Emma and Jake. That's when my phone rang one more time, and I saw a number I didn't recognize. The unknown number turned out to be Emma, calling from the hotel lobby phone because Sarah had confiscated her cell phone. My granddaughter's voice was small and scared, nothing like the confident teenager I knew. Grandma, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm really confused about what's happening." She spoke in whispers, clearly trying not to be overheard. "Mom and Dad keep arguing about money and hotels, and Dad looks like he might cry. Mom threw her phone across the room, and now it's broken." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of what I'd set in motion. "Are you safe, sweetheart? Are you somewhere warm with food? We're in this tiny hotel room with 2 beds and no heat. The bathroom smells weird, and there's mold on the ceiling. Mom bought bread and cheese from a corner store because she said we can't afford restaurants anymore." Emma's voice cracked. "Jake asked if we did something wrong, and Dad just stared at the wall. The old Linda would have caved immediately, would have called the nearest luxury hotel and booked them a suite. But the new Linda understood that rescuing them now would only teach them that tantrums and manipulation eventually worked. Emma, honey, I need you to understand something. This situation isn't about you or Jake. It's about choices your parents made without thinking about the consequences." "But what choices? What happened to our hotel? Dad keeps saying there was a computer error, but Mom keeps screaming about how you ruined everything." Smart girl. At 16, she was already seeing through her parents' lies. "Your mother and father planned this vacation using my money, but they never intended for me to come with you. They left me at the airport in New York." The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. When Emma spoke again, her voice was different, older. "They left you at the airport? On purpose?" "On purpose. After I paid $33,000 for everyone's tickets, hotels, and tours." "Oh my God." She was quiet again. "That's why you canceled everything. You canceled it all because they ditched you. I canceled everything because someone needed to show them that actions have consequences. I'm sorry you and Jake got caught in the middle, but your parents put you there, not me. Mom said you were being spiteful, but you were supposed to come with us, weren't you? This was supposed to be a family trip." I could hear the pieces clicking together in her teenage mind. "She lied to me. She said you decided at the last minute that you didn't want to travel. I never decided any such thing. I was at the airport with my suitcase, ready to board, when your mother announced there had been a mix-up with my ticket." Emma's breathing was shaky. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I didn't know. Nobody told us what really happened." A pause. "Are we going to be stuck here?" "That depends on what your parents decide to do. They'll figure something out." I hoped I sounded more confident than I felt. "I have to go. Mom's coming back from the front desk and she looks really angry." Emma's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I love you, Grandma. I'm sorry they were so mean to you." The line went dead, and I sat in my quiet house feeling the full weight of what I'd done. My grandchildren were innocent victims in this mess, and seeing them suffer because of their parents' greed and my revenge was harder than I'd anticipated. But sometimes the only way to teach bullies a lesson is to stop enabling their behavior, even when innocent people get hurt in the process. The next 3 days passed in relative silence. No frantic calls, no desperate voicemails, no angry threats. Just the occasional text from Emma, sent when she could sneak access to the hotel's computer, updating me on their situation. They'd moved to an even cheaper hotel. Sarah had attempted to charm the American embassy into helping them, but diplomatic staff weren't in the business of solving vacation funding problems for entitled Americans. Michael had tried calling his boss for an advance on his salary, but being told your son-in-law abandoned his mother at the airport didn't exactly inspire generosity. Sarah's sister, Rebecca, the same one who'd questioned the morality of their plan, had refused to wire money for return flights. "You made your bed," had been her exact words, according to Emma. I spent those 3 days doing something I hadn't done in years, focusing entirely on myself. I rearranged my living room furniture, finally hanging the paintings I'd bought months ago but never found time to display. I called old friends I'd neglected while managing family crises. I even started reading a novel for pleasure instead of the investment magazines and financial planning books that usually filled my evenings. On Wednesday evening, as I was enjoying a glass of wine and watching the snow fall in my backyard, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Beth holding a bottle of champagne and grinning. "I brought reinforcements," she announced when I opened the door. "We're celebrating your newfound backbone." We settled in my living room with the champagne and a plate of cheese and crackers. Beth had been following the saga through my updates, and she was practically glowing with vicarious satisfaction. "Have you heard anything today?" she asked. Emma managed to send an email from the hotel lobby. Apparently, Michael spent the morning at the airport trying to negotiate standby seats on flights home. The cheapest options are still $3,000 per person because it's peak holiday season. Beth nearly choked on her champagne. $15,000? They'd need to pay $15,000 to get home? Unless they want to stay in Paris until after New Year's when prices drop. But from what Emma described, their current accommodation wouldn't survive that long without causing some kind of international incident. This is better than Christmas morning, Beth laughed. I'm sorry. I know they're your family, but watching Sarah finally face consequences for her behavior is deeply satisfying. I had to admit I agreed, though the grandchildren's involvement still bothered me. Emma seems to be handling it better than Jake. She's old enough to understand what really happened, but Jake keeps asking why Grandma doesn't love them anymore. He'll understand when he's older. Right now, he's seeing his parents' choices play out, and that's a valuable lesson, even if it's painful. We were interrupted by my phone ringing. The display showed Michael's number, and I hesitated. Beth raised an eyebrow. Are you going to answer it? I let it go to voicemail. Whatever he had to say, I could listen to it on my own terms. The message was different from his previous desperate pleas. His voice was calm, measured, almost businesslike. Mom, I know you're screening my calls, and I don't blame you. What we did was wrong, inexcusably wrong. Sarah convinced me it was just a harmless way to take a family vacation without complications. But leaving you at the airport was cruel, and using your money to do it was theft. Beth leaned forward, clearly impressed by this change in tone. I'm calling because I want you to know that I've figured out a way to get us home. I won't ask you for money, and I won't ask you to fix what we broke. But I need you to know that Emma and Jake had nothing to do with this plan. They thought you were coming with us until the very last minute. When we get home, Sarah and I will face whatever consequences you think are appropriate, but please don't punish the kids for our mistakes. The message ended, and I stared at my phone. This was the son I remembered from before he married Sarah, the one who took responsibility for his actions instead of making excuses. Well, Beth said, that was unexpected. He almost sounded like a grown-up. Before I could respond, another call came in. This time, it was an international number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, with a slight French accent. Mrs. Walker, this is Inspector Dubois with the Paris Police Prefecture. I'm calling regarding an incident involving your family members. My blood ran cold. Images of accidents, emergencies, hospitals flashed through my mind. Are they hurt? What happened? No, madame, they are not hurt, but they are in custody for attempting to leave their hotel without paying their bill. The hotel manager called us when they tried to, skip out on their charges. I sank into my chair, Beth watching with growing alarm. They were arrested? Detained for questioning. The hotel bill is approximately 2,000 euros. Your son claims there has been a misunderstanding with their travel arrangements, but the hotel requires payment before they can be released. 2,000 euros, roughly $2,400, 3 days in a budget hotel, plus meals charged to their room, plus whatever other expenses they'd accumulated. Sarah's plan to live cheaply until they figured out a way home had clearly backfired. Inspector, I need to understand something. Are my grandchildren involved in this? The children are with your son and daughter-in-law, yes. They are not in trouble, but they cannot leave until the bill is resolved. Emma and Jake were sitting in a French police station because their parents couldn't pay a hotel bill. The image of my 16-year-old granddaughter trying to understand why police officers were speaking rapid French to her father made my chest tight. What are my options, Inspector? The hotel will accept payment by international wire transfer or credit card. If payment is received, your family can be released immediately. If not, he paused diplomatically, the French legal system will need to become involved. I looked at Beth, who was mouthing, "Don't do it," while shaking her head vigorously. She was right. Paying their hotel bill would send exactly the wrong message. It would tell Michael and Sarah that no matter how badly they behaved, Grandma would always bail them out in the end. But Emma and Jake didn't deserve to spend Christmas Eve in a police station. Inspector, can you separate the children from this situation? Find somewhere safe for them to stay while their parents sort out their legal issues? We can contact the American consulate for assistance with the minors, but it will take time to arrange proper guardianship, perhaps several days. Several days. Emma and Jake would spend Christmas in some kind of French government facility while their parents faced fraud charges. I closed my eyes and made a decision I hoped I wouldn't regret. I'll pay the hotel bill, but only the basic charges, room and any meals that were already included. Nothing extra. Très bien, madame. I will arrange for the hotel to contact you directly for payment information. Your family should be released within the hour. After I hung up, Beth stared at me with disappointment. Linda, you just rewarded their terrible behavior. I saved my grandchildren from spending Christmas in French social services. There's a difference. And now Sarah knows that no matter what she does, you'll rescue them if she puts the kids in danger. I hadn't thought of it that way, but Beth was right. By paying the hotel bill, I'd essentially handed Sarah a blueprint for future manipulation. Threaten the grandchildren's well-being, and Grandma would cave. That realization made me angrier than everything else combined. 30 minutes later, my phone rang again. Michael's voice was subdued. Grateful, but also wary. Mom, thank you. I know we don't deserve your help after what we did. You don't. I paid that bill for Emma and Jake, not for you and Sarah. I understand, and I want you to know that we found a way home. My boss agreed to advance me enough money for economy flights tomorrow. We'll be back in New York by Christmas Eve. Good. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Michael, when you get home, you and I need to have a very serious conversation about boundaries and about the difference between family support and financial exploitation. I know, you're right, about everything. Sarah threatens to keep the grandchildren away from me. That threat ends now. If she tries to use Emma and Jake as weapons against me, she'll discover exactly how serious I can be about protecting what matters to me. The silence on his end told me he understood, but I had a feeling the real confrontation was still to come. They returned to New York on Christmas Eve, and I spent Christmas Day alone by choice. I'd received tentative invitations from neighbors and friends, but I wanted the quiet to think about what came next. The woman who'd written those checks for years without question was gone. The woman who'd canceled a $33,000 vacation in an afternoon was still figuring out who she wanted to be. The day after Christmas, Emma called. She was at home, and from the sound of her voice, she'd been crying. Grandma, can I come see you? Just me, not my parents. Of course, sweetheart. Do you need me to pick you up? Mom said she'll drive me over, but she wants to talk to you first. I almost laughed. Sarah wanted to talk to me. After everything that had happened, she still thought she could manipulate her way back into my good graces. Tell your mother she can drop you off, but I'm not interested in talking to her right now. An hour later, Sarah's car pulled into my driveway. I watched from my window as Emma got out. Then Sarah rolled down her window and called out, Linda, we need to talk. I opened my front door and stepped onto the porch. We have nothing to discuss, Sarah. You nearly destroyed our family, she shouted across my front yard. Do you have any idea what you put us through? The audacity was breathtaking. I put you through? You stole my money and left me at the airport. We weren't stealing anything. We were giving you what you always claim you want, more family time. Emma had been standing frozen between us, but now she walked toward the house. Mom, just go. You're making it worse. Emma, get back in this car right now. We're not done talking about this. I stepped forward. Emma is 16 years old, and she's welcome to visit her grandmother anytime she wants. Drive away, Sarah. You can't turn my children against me. I haven't turned anyone against you. You've done that yourself. I put my arm around Emma's shoulders. Emma, go inside and make yourself some hot chocolate. Your mother was just leaving. Sarah sat in her car for a full minute, engine running, glaring at us. Finally, she drove off with a screech of tires that I'm sure my neighbors appreciated. Inside, Emma collapsed on my sofa and started crying in earnest. Grandma, they've been fighting nonstop since we got home. Dad keeps apologizing to Mom for letting you embarrass the family, and Mom keeps screaming about how she's never been so humiliated in her life. I handed her a box of tissues. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this. I'm not caught in the middle. I know exactly what happened. Emma looked up at me with her father's eyes, but with a steadiness that reminded me of myself. Mom showed me the bank statements yesterday. She wanted to prove to me how generous you've been over the years, thinking it would make me feel guilty about what you did in Paris. What did the statements show? Everything. Grandma, every check you've written to them for the past 5 years. Their mortgage payments, car payments, the kids' school fees, Christmas gifts, vacation money, even groceries sometimes. Emma's voice was getting stronger. $47,000 last year alone, and that doesn't count the Paris trip. I sat down heavily. I'd known I was being generous, but seeing the total spelled out in black and white was startling even to me. Mom thought showing me those numbers would prove that you owe us, that we deserve your money because we're family. But all it proved to me was that you've been taking care of us for years while getting nothing back but demands for more money. Emma wiped her eyes and looked at me directly. I want you to know that Jake and I never asked for any of it. We didn't know about the mortgage payments or the car loans or any of it. We thought Dad just had a really good job. I know, sweetheart. Mom's already planning the next thing. She was on the phone with Dad's boss yesterday, trying to get him a raise so they can maintain their lifestyle without depending on Linda's guilt money. That's exactly what she called it. Guilt money. Something cold settled in my stomach. Sarah wasn't learning from this experience. She was adapting to it, looking for new ways to manipulate the situation to her advantage. Emma, I need to ask you something important. Do you feel safe at home? Are your parents taking their anger about me out on you or Jake? She hesitated. They're not hitting us or anything, but the fighting is constant, and they keep asking us to take sides. Mom wants us to be angry at you for ruining our vacation, and Dad keeps asking if we think he's a bad father for what happened. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. The next morning, I called my attorney, James Morrison, and made an appointment for that afternoon. I'd been thinking about Emma's words all night, about the $47,000 I'd given them just last year, about Sarah's comment about guilt money, and about the pattern of behavior that wasn't going to stop just because they'd been embarrassed in Paris. James listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes in his careful handwriting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled softly. Linda, what you're describing is a classic case of elder financial abuse. The fact that it's coming from family members doesn't make it less serious. I want to make some changes to my will, I said, and I want to establish some boundaries that have legal backing. What did you have in mind? I want to set up education trusts for Emma and Jake, college, graduate school, whatever they need. But I want the money protected so their parents can't access it for their own expenses. James nodded approvingly. That's wise. What about your other assets? I'm removing Michael and Sarah as beneficiaries. The house, my investments, everything except the children's education funds will go to charity. Are you sure about that? That's a significant change. I thought about the past 5 years, about writing check after check while getting nothing but demands for more, about being left at the airport after paying for their dream vacation, about Sarah's plan to teach me that money doesn't buy you a place where you're not wanted. I'm absolutely sure, but I want them to know about the change immediately. No surprises after I'm gone. James arranged for the new will to be drawn up and witnessed that same week. On New Year's Eve, I invited Michael and Sarah to my house for what I told them was an important family discussion. Emma and Jake were at a friend's party, which was exactly what I'd wanted. They arrived together but sat on opposite ends of my sofa, the tension between them obvious. Sarah looked like she hadn't slept in days, and Michael kept checking his phone as if expecting an urgent call that would rescue him from this conversation. I asked you here because we need to discuss the future of our relationship, I began. What happened in Paris clarified some things for me. Sarah opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. For the past 5 years, I've given you over $200,000. Mortgage payments, car loans, vacation money, emergency funds, school fees, Christmas gifts. I've written checks without question because I believed I was helping family. Michael's face went pale. Mom, we never asked you to add it all up like that. No, you just kept asking for more. But what happened at the airport showed me the truth. You don't see me as family. You see me as a resource to be managed. Sarah made that very clear when she said my money doesn't buy me a place where I'm not wanted. Sarah finally found her voice. You're twisting everything. We just wanted some space to enjoy our vacation without having to worry about accommodating your needs. My needs? I laughed. Sarah, I'm 68 years old, not 98. I don't need assistance walking or eating or using the bathroom. The only accommodation you would have needed to make was treating me with basic respect and including me in the family vacation I paid for. I reached for the envelope James had prepared. Since you've made it clear that my financial support doesn't earn me a place in this family, I'm withdrawing that support permanently. I handed Michael the letter. This is notice that there will be no more mortgage payments, no more car loans, no more emergency funds. You're both adults with jobs. You can support yourselves. Michael scanned the letter, his eyes widening. Mom, you can't just cut us off entirely. I'm not cutting you off. I'm treating you like the independent adults you claim to be. Sarah snatched the letter from Michael's hands. As she read, her face went through several emotions. Confusion, disbelief, and finally, fury. You changed your will, she said flatly. You're leaving everything to charity. Emma and Jake will have their education fully funded through trust accounts you can't touch. Beyond that, my assets will go to organizations that actually value what I have to contribute. The room erupted. Sarah started screaming about ingratitude and manipulation. Michael tried to mediate while simultaneously pleading for me to reconsider, but I sat calmly in my chair, watching them realize that their ATM had permanently closed. Finally, Sarah played her last card. Fine. If that's how you want it, you'll never see Emma and Jake again. We're done with your games. I smiled. Sarah, Emma is 16 and Jake is 14. In less than 2 years, Emma will be 18 and can make her own decisions about seeing me. Jake will follow soon after. Are you really willing to spend the next few years being the mother who kept them from their grandmother over money? The fight went out of her then. She knew as well as I did that turning the children against me would only turn them against her. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my garden, enjoying my morning coffee and reading a letter from Emma. She's starting college in the fall, her tuition fully paid by the trust I established. Jake calls me every week to tell me about his soccer games and his latest art projects. Michael and I have a polite but distant relationship, built on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. Sarah and I don't speak at all, which suits us both perfectly. I learned something important at 68 years old. The people who truly love you will find a way to show it without requiring payment. Everyone else is just presenting you with bills, and I'm done paying for love that was never real in the first place. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.